People who seek to kill Mr. Kelly rather than allow the corrupt criminal conduct of those who manufactured his convictions be exposed.
RKelly's been locked up for years now, but the story that's coming out from behind those bars, it's sounding less like a regular prison sentence and more like a plot straight out of a Hollywood thriller. The man's not just talking about surviving jail politics. He's talking murder plots, secret orders, and even high-level industry sabotage. Let's rewind. After decades of rumors, lawsuits, and scandal, Robert Sylvester Kelly, one of the biggest names in R&B history, got hit with the hammer. In 2022, he was sentenced to 30 years for racketeering and trafficking charges out of New York. Then in 2023, another 20 years for child pornography and enticement in Chicago, with most of it running at the same time. Basically, he's not walking out anytime soon. But if you believe what's coming from inside, the feds don't even want him to live out that sentence. One of the wildest claims comes from a man named Mike Glenn Stein, a former inmate in Kelly's prison who was terminally ill. In a sworn affidavit, Stein said that prison officials and members of the Aryan Brotherhood approached him with an offer: kill R. Kelly and we'll get you out early. According to Stein, they told him exactly how to do it and promised protection. But instead of going through with it, Stein warned Kelly and later put it in writing for his lawyers. That's not all. Stein says there were multiple plots, not just one. Some were supposed to be accidents, like poisoning Kelly's food or slipping something into his drink. Others were straight-up violent attacks planned for the yard or shower area. The way Stein tells it, prison staff were in on it from the jump, either looking the other way or actually helping set it up. And this lines up with what another former inmate says, a man who actually shared a cell with Kelly, Ronnie Bowe. Ronnie's story adds another layer. He says he and Kelly talked for hours about life, music, and the industry. And according to Ronnie, Kelly believed he wasn't just being punished for crimes, he was being silenced. Why? Because Kelly told him he had information and proof about industry corruption on a massive scale. Stuff that could take down music execs, top artists, and even billion-dollar corporations. One of the biggest claims, that his own music catalog, worth over $1 billion, was stolen through shady contracts and legal manipulation. And the people behind it allegedly had enough pull to make sure he never got a chance to fight back. Ronnie says Kelly went deep on his history with Jay-Z, claiming that the bad blood went way beyond their failed Best of Both Worlds project in the early 2000s. According to Kelly, Jay-Z not only blackballed him in the industry, but also helped fund the surviving R. Kelly documentary, the same series that reignited public outrage and pushed prosecutors to reopen cases. If you connect the dots the way Kelly sees it, the prison sentence is just the public-facing part of the punishment. The real game is making sure he never gets to tell his side, never regains control of his music, and never exposes what he knows. And remember, this is all happening while Kelly is dealing with health issues. Reports say he's had blood clots, panic attacks, and other problems that could be life-threatening if untreated. According to Stein and Ronnie, the medical care in prison has been selective at best, with some staff allegedly delaying or denying treatment on purpose. That's why Kelly's legal team even tried to reach out to Donald Trump while he was still president, hoping for a pardon. They framed it as a case of a black man being targeted by a corrupt system, not just punished for his crimes. Obviously, that didn't happen, but it shows just how desperate things got on the inside. To the outside world, R. Kelly is a convicted predator serving time for crimes he's been accused of for decades. But inside those walls, if you believe the people closest to him, he's also a marked man, not just by other inmates, but by the very system that's supposed to keep him alive. And that's just the opening act of this story.
Discussions have been had about poison in the food hall, about poison in the commissary. Discussions with Mr. Stein have been had about stabbings. These are the kinds of methods that have been discussed.
When Ronnie Bowe started talking about his time as R. Kelly's cellmate, it wasn't the usual prison gossip. He wasn't describing a washed-up celebrity hiding in his bunk. He painted a picture of a man who was still fighting a war, just from the inside. According to Ronnie, Kelly saw his situation as way bigger than the criminal charges in his case files. In his mind, this was an industry takedown, a coordinated hit that started years before the courtroom and ended with him sitting in a cell with nothing but his memories and a stack of legal papers. One of the biggest bombshells Ronnie claims Kelly dropped, the story of his stolen music catalog. Kelly told him that between 1998 and the early 2000s, his masters and publishing rights, valued at over $1 billion, were pulled out from under him through a series of shady contracts. He said lawyers, label heads, and certain friendly artists worked together to lock him out of ownership. And once the catalog was gone, the next step was to make sure he couldn't mount a comeback. Kelly believed that's where the feud with Jay-Z took a deadly turn. He told Ronnie that the fallout from their Best of Both Worlds project wasn't just about creative clashes. It was about power. The tour that collapsed after a pepper spray incident, the tension during performances, the constant media shade. According to Kelly, all of it was part of a bigger effort to make him toxic in the industry. Ronnie said Kelly even accused Jay-Z of helping bankroll the surviving RKelly docuseries. In Kelly's mind, this wasn't just a TV show. It was character assassination designed to finish the job the industry started, make him unmarketable, destroy public sympathy, and strip him of any credibility before he could speak out. And whether you believe him or not, you can't ignore the timing. The docuseries aired, outrage exploded, and within months, prosecutors in New York and Chicago filed fresh charges. For Kelly, that wasn't coincidence, it was strategy. But the part that makes his story even more chilling is how far he says his enemies were willing to go. Ronnie claims Kelly believed that the same people who blocked him in the industry had influence inside the prison system. Remember those murder plots Mike Glenn Stein talked about? Ronnie says Kelly told him they weren't random, that prison gangs don't just target celebrities without a green light from someone higher up. According to Kelly, there were offers made that certain inmates could shave years off their time if they took him out. And because he was a high-profile target, prison staff could make it look like an accident or a fight gone wrong. Ronnie described one moment when Kelly got word that a hit was planned for the yard. Instead of going outside that day, he told a guard he felt sick and stayed in his cell. Later, he heard that the same inmates who were supposed to run into him ended up getting into a fight with someone else. Whether that was luck or strategy, Kelly took it as proof that he was being hunted, and it wasn't just physical danger. Ronnie claims there were times when Kelly's legal mail went missing, when visits were mysteriously canceled, and when medical requests took weeks to process. To Kelly, these weren't mistakes. They were pressure tactics. The craziest part? Kelly told Ronnie that this wasn't just about revenge or punishment. It was about keeping certain secrets buried. He hinted at knowing too much about the inner workings of the music industry, from illegal deals to under-the-table payouts. He believed if he ever got a public platform again, he could blow the roof off the game. That's why, in Kelly's mind, survival wasn't just about making it to the end of his sentence. It was about living long enough to talk. And in a place where whispers can get you stabbed, he knew that was a dangerous goal. By the time Ronnie left that cell, he said he believed one thing: whether you think Kelly's guilty, innocent, or somewhere in between, his fall wasn't just about the crimes in court. It was about power, money, and shutting a man up.
In the emergency filing, they alleged that RKelly was giving an additional dose of medication by prison staff. And they're alleging that because of that additional medication that he was instructed to take and that he actually took, he suffered a overdose. So they say that RKelly woke up allegedly on June 13th and he felt faint. He was dizzy. He started to see black spots. He got up and he fell. He crawled to the door of the cell and he lost consciousness then. At that point, he was placed on a gurney. He was taken by ambulance to a nearby hospital because they tried to take him to the hospital inside of or associated with the facility that he's in, but they couldn't help.
For most people, talk about hits in prison stays in the rumor mill. Whispers on the tier, quiet warnings pass through the yard. But in RKelly's case, somebody put it on paper. That somebody was Mike Glenn Stein, a terminally ill inmate who claimed prison officials themselves had approached him with a deadly offer. Take out Kelly and you'll go home early. Stein's affidavit was sworn, dated, and filed. In it, he spelled out exactly what he says went down: the time, the location, the names of the officers who allegedly gave the order, and the way they suggested he do it. The plan was ugly but simple. catch Kelly in a vulnerable spot, make it look like a fight over nothing, and leave him dead before help arrived. The affidavit went further, saying this wasn't an isolated plot. According to Stein, there had been multiple attempts lined up, each one with a different inmate tapped to do the job. One plan involved slipping something into Kelly's food in the chow hall. Another involved catching him in the showers. The way Stein described it, the higher-ups were banking on the idea that in prison, violence is just part of the scenery, and nobody would dig too deep if a high-profile inmate turned up dead. When Stein refused, he claims the same officers told him, "You just threw away your ticket out." That's when he decided to document everything and get the information to Kelly's lawyers. And it's not hard to see why Kelly's team jumped on it. They'd been saying from the start that their client wasn't just being punished, he was being targeted. Now they had something that looked like proof. From their perspective, the motives were layered. On one hand, Kelly was a convicted sex offender with a mountain of public outrage against him, making him a prime target in prison politics. But on the other hand, his legal team argued, this was personal and political. They claimed Kelly was part of a long list of powerful black men in entertainment who'd been systematically brought down when they got too big, too rich, or too informed about the industry's dirtiest secrets. They pointed to the way Bill Cosby's and Michael Jackson's careers ended under clouds of scandal, saying Kelly's case was cut from the same cloth, only with a far more dangerous twist because of the prison element. This is where Kelly's camp started pulling in the political angle. Back in the final months of Donald Trump's presidency, they reached out to his administration, framing Kelly's situation as a civil rights issue. They argued that the justice system had been weaponized against him, that evidence was manipulated, and that the media was used as a tool to bias juries before trials even began. They wanted a pardon. It didn't happen. But the move alone showed just how high Kelly's team was willing to aim. They weren't just fighting his charges in court. They were trying to change the narrative entirely. To Kelly, all of this was part of a bigger message being sent to other artists. Stay in your lane. Don't cross the wrong people. Don't ask too many questions about where the money's really going. He told Ronnie Bo that once you start looking behind the curtain, once you realize who's pulling the strings in the industry, you either play along or you get erased. And that's why, in Kelly's eyes, prison wasn't just about losing his freedom. It was about keeping him boxed in where he couldn't call a press conference, couldn't drop a diss track, couldn't sit down for an unedited interview. The affidavit from Stein didn't just back up Kelly's paranoia. It made it look like maybe he wasn't paranoid at all. Because if a federal prison officer was really out here telling an inmate to do the job in exchange for freedom, that's not just corruption, that's a hit job. R. Kelly's reality today isn't the glamorous, chart-topping life he once had. It's steel bars, cold food, and the constant sense that someone wants him gone. And according to the people who've been closest to him inside, that danger hasn't gone away just because his story made headlines. If anything, it might be worse now. Inside, Kelly's not moving like a regular inmate. He keeps his head down, stays alert, and watches the clock during yard time. Former cellmate Ronnie Bo said Kelly rarely let his guard down, even around people he talked to every day. He'd eat slow, avoid taking food or drinks from anyone, and was picky about where he sat, especially in the chow hall. It wasn't paranoia to him, it was survival. Then there's the health issue. Kelly's been dealing with blood clots, panic attacks, and other problems for years now. In prison, those conditions don't just make life uncomfortable, they make you vulnerable. If you're sick, you're slower. If you're slower, you're an easier target. And according to sources, getting him proper treatment has been a fight every step of the way. Some of the people on the outside who still ride for Kelly have been working to keep his name in the news. Not just to argue his innocence, but to make sure that if anything happens to him inside, the public is already watching. They believe that the more attention on his situation, the harder it'll be for any accident to just disappear into prison paperwork. And they've got reason to be on edge. Remember Mike Glenn Stein's affidavit? That wasn't years ago. That was recent. Which means if those conversations about taking care of Kelly really happened, the same people allegedly involved could still be working there today. And if the offers were real, there's no guarantee they've stopped looking for someone willing to take the deal. Kelly's own words, as told to Ronnie Bo, show just how deep he thinks this goes. He believes his time behind bars isn't just about him paying for crimes. It's about erasing him completely. Not just his freedom, but his voice, his music, his legacy. He's convinced that if the right people could make him vanish quietly, they'd do it in a heartbeat. And honestly, in the twisted world of prison politics, that's not as far-fetched as it sounds. High-profile inmates have been killed before. Sometimes by people with nothing to lose, sometimes by people promised something they couldn't resist. The big question now is whether Kelly can last long enough to fight the battles he's still trying to fight. He's appealing parts of his convictions, but that's a slow process, and appeals don't protect you from the wrong cellmate or the wrong tray of food. On the flip side, there's a part of the public that doesn't care what happens to him. For them, the crimes he's convicted of erase any sympathy. They see every danger he faces inside as just part of what he deserves. But for his supporters, and even for some people who don't like him but don't like the idea of a targeted hit in prison, it's a matter of principle. Because if the murder plot allegations are true, then it's not about liking or defending R. Kelly. It's about the system deciding who gets to live and who doesn't. And once that line is crossed, it's not just celebrities who are at risk. For now, Kelly's still breathing, still fighting his legal cases, still refusing to say anything publicly that could disappear him faster. But in a place where favors and grudges can outlive the inmates themselves, his clock is ticking loud. Whether you think he's a predator getting his due, a victim of a bigger setup, or both, one thing's clear. This story ain't over until either he walks out or he doesn't.